Are we live? I think we did it. Right, so I'll give it about 4 or 5 minutes just to get people joining, and then we'll get started. Who have we got? Danny, how are you? Dr. Sung, Rupert, Jenny. So if you have any questions, you can post them up and we'll try and get through them as well. Right, so I think we'll get started now. So if you've got your Lego and composite, you can follow along with us today. So firstly, what is tooth Lego? So it's just these models that you can see here, and it's got these guided fissures for you to follow, and it's based on natural teeth, so you're sort of not guessing and you're learning how to follow patterns in nature. So teeth are, they're quite predictable. They follow the same patterns. So if you know the basic outline, then you can replicate that. So we'll start off by just sort of drawing the outline of the teeth. So we need to know the roads to draw the taxi. So I've actually got my camera sticky taped to my X-ray machine so I can articulate it a little. Let's see how we go. So which tooth do we want to start on? Let me just check the comments. Hey boys. Bio superior. We've got the gang. Right, so let's start with, what's the most upper molar? All right, let's do it. So we've got just a basic shape here. So with upper molars, yep. So with upper molars, we've got the basic outline, I'd say, is just a line down the middle, and then almost a 90-degree angle there, and then we bisect that line. So if you have that basic shape, then you can't really go too wrong. Then we can play around a little. So the most variation in an upper first molar is the mesobuccal cusp. It can get quite complex, so you can see there's a lot of variation just around there. But it's best to just keep it simple. So if we just extend that and curve it up, that's probably the most basic you can do. With the distobuccal, same thing. We just curve that up. And then the mesobuccal is just an extension of that groove. So if we join that down, and then that's our primary anatomy done. So if you follow that, we'll get teeth that look like teeth without getting too fancy. If you wanted to play around a little, I'll see if I've got a different colour. Two seconds. Yeah. So if you want to get fancy with our anatomy, we can just sort of highlight some of the grooves a little, just like that. And with the variations in the mesobuccal, there's a few common types. So we've got So you got some that are more sort of wider at the base than the fissure near the center of the tooth. And then we've got some that are they've almost got this second cusp in the middle. So that's with the first upper molar. What's going on in the comments? Let me check. Looking for spiders. They're coming soon, Omar. Right, so now we've got the basic outline. So if you've got a pen and paper, it might be a good idea to just practice drawing that a few times first. So the whole idea of it is repetition. The more you repeat something, the more it will become natural for you. So let's get started. So we'll get a bit of composite first, just on our pad. And for this exercise, you can use a bit of the bond, just as like a wetting resin. Or if you've got dipping resin or modeling resin, that works too. And it's probably better to use that for real patients. So what instruments do we need? The main one is a microbrush. Good night, Rugged. Microbrush and a flat plastic and a sickle instrument. I think just those three you can pretty well do most teeth. Or you can use this little instrument. This is still the prototype version. So, yep, the EndoPen. So the new version is slightly different, but it's the same kind of principle. So we've got a really small, try and get that in focus, a really small flat plastic end, which has got curved edges there. And that fits perfectly for those, small spaces for your posterior anatomy. It's quite flexible as well, so it won't stick to your composite. It'll sort of push and then it'll bounce off. And then on the other end, we can attach any file you like. So I prefer a size 15 file. And just make sure you get stainless steel files. I accidentally bought some nickel titanium and they don't bend, which sucks. So I like to first, when we're doing just normal composite class 1s, like to build up the increments until we get to the base of the fissures. So by the time you've built up the tooth, it should look like a tooth Lego almost. And I usually do that with an A3 increment. Trying not to read these comments. So with the A3 increment, just to the base of the fissures, and that will give you a polychromatic restoration. And then with our enamel increments, I like to do them cusp by cusp. So you could start either with the buccal or the palatal, doesn't really matter. One thing I will say though is if you pick one side, always pick that side. So if you want to just do the buccals first, always start with the buccals. And that'll keep it sort of as a routine for you. And then that way you'll sort of go on autopilot when you're doing this. So if we go back to that diagram, that's funny. If we go back to that diagram, so the main shape we said was that. So if we try to get that shape as early as possible, we'll sort of have a guide for when we're placing the rest of the composite. So I like to roll it into a little ball, like you can see there. And then just a bit of the wetting resin or the dipping resin. So it's an unfilled resin, so it won't inhibit polymerization. And then what you want to do is basically just adapt that increment first. So push it against the tooth. And then we want to just push it against the edges, like so. So you want to seal the composite first against the border of the tooth, and that will stop it from sort of coming out or falling off. So we want to make sure that it's stable before we start playing around with our composite. So once that's in there, you can see how it just bends in there. And then we're just nudging that composite down towards the fissure. So we'll keep it fairly simple, this one. And then we just want to, you don't want to start from the middle of the composite, you want to go from the edges. So you're just pushing it where you want it to be. I might just zoom in a little. Okay, so once we're happy, we can use the other end or just a little sickle instrument. And you just want to tidy up the edges and make them sharp. Once you're happy, you can set that. So I usually, it's mostly because I'm just a bit impatient, but I usually just tack cure my enamel increments when I'm doing this for real patients. But I was talking to Steve Schiffenhaus and he was saying that it's actually a good idea because it delays the gel point of the composite. So you're less likely to get white lines and that kind of thing. People want to bit it. There we go. Is that better? Okay. It's hard for me to reach though. Okay. So we've done our mesial buckle, so let's do our disto buckle. So just repeating again, try to seal the edges first. Does anyone have their Lego with them and sort of following along with us? I wish I could read these comments right now. So as you push it against the margins, you'll get a bit of excess and then just scrape that off. Okay. Then looking back again, we've got that extra groove if you want to add it. So that would start from about the base of the fissure. Then we can use our micro brush just to soften the anatomy a little. And just define the outline. So that's where we're up to at the moment. So we've got that shape. Then it's really just a matter of filling in the blanks. So we've got that primary anatomy done. So we could even just get a huge piece of composite and just pack it all the way in. And I'll just get a bit more of the modeling resin. And you want to try and avoid any air bubbles, so you want to make sure you pack it in pretty well. What are we saying? Still not sure whether Bill exists. Fair point. It's pronounced composite, not composite. Okay. Oh, you guys are funny. So a micro brush really helps get rid of any voids there as well. So I might have left this composite out a bit too long, so it's setting on me. So I'm just going to try and remove it with a stiffer instrument. I think I might have to save this just so I can read the comments after. So again, just wiping against the cusp there. And I generally like a little bit of separation between the cusps because it lets that darker A3 sort of shine through, which makes it look like you've placed tints in your composite. And then you can use like a dry micro brush if you've put too much of the modelling resin, just to keep that nice and clean. Once you're happy, you can set that. Then we've just got to fill in the last blank. So the key to anything is repetition. So the tooth Lego comes in 14 pack. So if you number the models just on the side, number 1 to 14, and then I'd probably suggest just doing one tooth every day, and that'll be 14 days. So just focus on one at a time. And that will take you about 2 weeks to master one tooth, and then you can move on to the next. So if you spend 2 weeks per tooth and there's 8 teeth, that'll take you about four months to master. And you just want to continue the fissure outline that's already there. So the disto buccal groove, this one here, continues with the mesiopalatal groove, but it's usually slightly inset to the mesial. And then just a micro brush to clean that up. And we're done. So that's just the basic primary anatomy done. So let's go through another tooth. 4 months too long. Do you have faster Lego? Finger. Oh, that's funny. Right, so let's do what's another hard one? Lower sixes are pretty complex. So let's work on that. So the basic shape for that is like a little, it's almost like a Nike tick. And then you just go down and you've got a Y. Then we go straight up. Then about 90 degrees. Then we sort of keep that one a bit small. And then kind of sloping down a little, just like that. Y for Johan, of course. Then we just fill in the shape. Just like that. So if we said the main sort of identifying characteristic is that little V shape, which is slightly more angled on one side, it's sort of asymmetric, then for me it makes sense to start with that cusp. So we'll just get some fresh composite. So I've got a little ball of composite and we'll just place it in the middle. Again, just seal the edges so it doesn't fall off. And then we're just nudging it towards the central groove. Once it's in the right spot, then we can tidy up the edges. So we're just pushing along the sides to do that. So that mid-buckle cusp, it actually goes sort of wedged in between the two lingual. So it's slightly beyond the midway point of the tooth. And then we want to keep it quite small centrally. So I'm just going to push it a little bit more towards the middle there. That's pretty good. Then we use a micro brush. So we've got that V shape just in the middle. And we'll tack cure that. And one of the reasons for tack curing it is just to have it hard enough to adapt to the next piece. So I'm going to go a little bit quicker this time. Once we've adapted that increment, we just open up those fissures again. Yep. So I generally just do all the buccals first and then go for the lingual. So once we've had that mid-buccal cusp done, everything else is just filling in the blanks. So the other thing with this distobuccal increment, you don't want it to extend to the middle of the tooth. It has to end to the distal, just there. Then once it's in the right spot, we'll just open up the fissures. So when you open up those fissures, the darker A3 horizontal increments that you did before will show through. But it's still sealed underneath, so you don't have to worry about any sensitivity or anything like that. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. You just fill in the gaps and then clean out the fissures. So Adelaide's a bit of an interesting place. We had probably the shortest lockdown in the world. It was meant to be 6 days, but we finished it in 3. And the reason that we had a lockdown was because we were doing really well in the pandemic. We had basically 0 cases or 0 transmission for over 100 days. And then suddenly we had, I think, like 22, which is still not much, but we shut down the whole state because of it. And even dental was closed. So we went from level 1 restrictions to level 5 pretty much overnight. And and I didn't even know level 5 existed, to be honest, but what it basically means is you just go straight to hospital and put up with anything else. So I'm just reopening those fissures there. And that's pretty much done. We sort of followed that basic shape. If you want to add some extra secondary anatomy, you can add an extra groove, sort of like an S shape, just there. And you can add a little groove there and a little groove there. But it's not really needed. I might just do that S shape there. And we're done. So we don't have too much time left, so we'll probably just go through some shapes and then you can practice at home. So you might have remembered we had those little emojis on my story before. So we've got just a little dog. I think it's the easiest way to remember is by associating it with a shape or with an image. So we've got a little dog. We've got somebody shrugging their shoulders or lifting their hands up. Then we've got Oma's spider. Then we've got I don't know what you call this, maybe like karate, H. So if we fill in the blanks for that. Yep. So this dog, this one here, is the second premolar on the lower jaw. This one here is the upper first premolar. Spider tooth is the upper second premolar. And then this one is the lower first premolar. See that extra groove? Doctor, this life is 4 weeks long. It's 4 months. But yeah, people went crazy, so we had pretty much no toilet paper within 2 hours of the announcement. No food whatsoever. Even takeaway was shut down. It was a huge line for KFC. People getting their fix before lockdown. Even exercise was illegal. So before we wrap up, just show you one more thing. So we've got cell down. So it's basically pack down, but slightly better. So I designed it myself with like parametric modeling, so the hole spacing is slightly better and the curvature as well. And I like to use the ISODAM sheets, and they're 6-inch, and this just fits it better for me. The holes are slightly more off-centered, so you're not struggling with the sheet. But you could also use it with 5-inch sheets. So if you're using it for a 6-inch, like the ISODAM, you'd place it in the corner and line that up, like so. So it's a bit easier to line up than the pack down as well. But the numbering as well, it's a bit easier to see. So you got 4, 4, and we've got 5. The holes are slightly bigger as well, so it's easier to mark. And yeah, because they're bigger as well, so when you're doing, let's say, the upper anterior sextant from like 3 to 3, so for that we just mark those 3. But if we're doing lowers, so let's say I'll flip it there, line it up with that corner. The teeth are a little bit smaller, so the holes need to be closer together. So you can actually just mark the closer towards the middle, rather than in the middle of the holes. And then that works a bit better for lowers. For quadrants, so if we lined it up in that corner, that will give us quadrant 4. If we lined it up with this corner here, that will give us quadrant 3 isolation. If we lined it up here, we'd get quadrant 2, and then quadrant 1. For single tooth isolation, I usually just freehand it, but there's also this little arrow for you to mark. So quadrant 1 would do there. Quadrant 2 would be there. Quadrant 3, so you're just lining it up with the quadrant. And then quadrant 4. That's basically it. And yeah, it's metal and it's Zelda, so that's the main advantages. Easy. So we'll just go through maybe the comments and questions now. Should auction this one off. But yeah, it will be available maybe next month. Same with the composite instrument. But yeah, the new version is slightly more tapered. But they've had some issues with production, so it's a bit delayed. Actually, I had someone ask me how do you trim the matrix for deep margin elevation. So I might go through that real quickly. So that's set 3 Lego. So we'll be sending out the videos for that pretty soon. It just has the most common challenges for class 2 restorations, which is you've got 2 adjacent class 2 cavities, you've got a deep proximal root cavity, you've got a cavity without a buccal or lingual wall, and then we've got a proximal cavity with no adjacent tooth. So it's going to be a few challenges to get a seal on that tooth. I'm not sure, does this live end automatically or once we reach 1 hour? We'll see how we go. So with the matrix modification, we want to decrease the height of the matrix and we want to increase the curvature. So I'll try and outline what that looks like. So basically like that. So if you get some curved scissors, so just like that. So just follow that outline. So this is really just an alternative to the deep margin elevation bands by Garrison, or using a greater curvature matrix band and then trimming it like Pascal and Monnier suggests. So most people should have just a standard Toffenmayer in their practice, which makes it a bit more accessible. And that's basically a greater curvature Toffenmayer. So once you place it in your retainer, just widen that hole slightly. Then you can kind of see as we tighten that matrix, you get an apical seal. Because of that divergence angle, it's tighter at the base than it is at the top. And then if you want greater divergence, it might be a good idea just to push against that matrix there. And then you can build up that margin and you won't have a straight profile. You have a sort of a divergent profile, which will support your ceramic quite well. So you can use that for deep margins. The other option is if you get a size 2 Toffelmeier and you just remove one of those bumps. You'll have a deeper extension, and then that will help in the really, really deep cases like this one here. It doesn't have as much divergence as this matrix here, but if your teeth are fairly close together, like this one here, you don't need that divergence. You just want to raise it up vertically. So I'll just attach that to a retainer as well. And the purpose of trimming one side is so that the gingiva and the tooth doesn't stop it from seeding, because you have more space on that side. So we'll just open that up. Then you'll get an apical seal. If you can't get the matrix past the margin, then it usually means that this side is too high, so you'll just need to trim a little bit higher up. Then if you have a wedge, you can place that in between, just to seal that. So you'd start off with this band just to elevate the margin until it's just supragingival. And then you'd swap over to just a normal sectional matrix. Then we've got the missing buccal wall. I'll probably do a post on that one pretty soon. But basically you want to rebuild that missing wall before you place your sectional. Otherwise, what will happen is your separation ring will just collapse. With the two adjacent cavities, we've got space distribution issue, so you don't want the space of one restoration to go into the space of the other. You want it to be balanced between the two, and there's generally 2 or 3 ways to get around that. The first way is to place your sectional so you can see it's going to go into the space of the other tooth. So you want to have some pressure coming in from the other side, and we can do that with placing another sectional, and that will stop it from collapsing. But we wouldn't restore them both together like that. We'd restore one, then take off the matrix and restore the other. The other option is to just have one matrix in there, pack your Teflon tape into that space, and that will give you a seal apically, and also stop it from going into the space of the other tooth. The third option, which I don't really prefer, but sometimes people do it, is to just build it up, have it go divergent into the other tooth, and then try to recontour that before placing the matrix for the other tooth. But it's quite easy just to place some Teflon, save you a bit of time. Then with this sort of distal of the last tooth, you could either use that deep margin elevation technique, or what's better is the matrix in a matrix. So So we get our, that's not a standard one. Get a standard Toffmeyer band. Then we place it against the tooth. And then there'll be a bit of a gap in the margin. So we then need to slide a sectional matrix in between and then tighten that. So I think we've reached about an hour. I'm not sure if this is still going on. I'll just see if there's any questions. When you take the Toffmeyer matrix off and there is bleeding, do you etch, prime and bond again before building up with V3? Generally I don't get bleeding because I place a floss ligature, and that seals any contamination. But if you do, I think it was Ashley was saying in one of her stories about it's better just to wipe the blood contamination off with a bit of adhesive rather than washing the tooth, because the water will be worse than the blood. But I'll need to double check that one. Did you figure out how to save? No. Almost didn't know how to start this slide. Maybe you guys can tell me. So with the floss ligature, you just get a bit of floss, make a little loop, and then repeat. then you've got a little self-ligating knot. And when you pull on that, it will apply tension. And that's just like a little barrier against any leakage. There we go, we've got Ashley confirming that, and Davey as well, Ericsson. There should be an option to let you save once the live ends. Does the live end automatically? Cool. Right, might as well just keep going until it ends. So, for those that joined a bit late, we went through for upper first molars to begin with. So there was the main thing to keep note of is that center outline. There's a lot of variation with the mesial buccal, but keeping it simple is the easiest way. Then we went through lower molars. We've got that little V shape or Y shape in the center. And then we've got a few different shapes. They're a bit hard to remember, so if you just try to think of something that looks similar, you'll try and make it easier for you. Then we went through the Zell down and the endo pen. And the good thing about that is actually it's malleable, so you can bend it for like anterior teeth, and it's very, very thin, so you can get in interproximally. And that was just a bit of an accident, to be honest. All right, I think we'll wrap it up here. Have a good morning, good night, and we might do this again. Thanks, guys.